Welcome to part 5. In this chapter we're going to have a closer look at kick and sub relationship. First we will do some mixing on each element, then add them both to a bus and mix even further. So let's start with the kick drum. Go to our mix console, find the kick, and we will start by adding a compressor. And we will use the Studio One compressor. And so what we want to achieve is a little bit tighter and punchier sound. So let's solo the kick and listen. My approach to compression is to dial in extreme settings so I can easily hear what the compressor does. Then I dial it back to a reasonable level. At around 15 milliseconds attack, we start to hear that nice snap that we're looking for. Now let's pull it back. By using the mix knob, we can make the compression less apparent and apply parallel compression without having to add a second channel. This keeps part of the kick untouched and only compress about 25% of the kick. This way we can keep the warmth and add punchiness at the same time. Now let's adjust the gain so the level is equal, compressed and uncompressed. Now let's move on to the EQ. Let's start with the high pass. We don't want to cut too much so the kick loses a lot of low end, but a bit to get rid of the lowest frequencies that might cause a rumble in big speakers. Now let's boost the low end a bit and add some deepness, somewhere between 50 and 60 Hz. I like how it sounds here around 59 Hz, but let's lower the gain a bit. There you can hear the difference. I can also hear that there is some boxiness in the kick drum that I want to remove. We will do that by sweeping an EQ band and see where it comes out. Look out for a boxy, kinda cheap sound. So around 435 is where it is, and now we can cut away some of it. And let's bypass on and off to hear the difference. The key is not to cut too much, because then you will ruin the sound and make it hollow. See it more as taming the unwanted frequency rather than eliminate them. Now let's bring out the top end of the kick to make it even more punchy and driving. Now let's bypass the EQ on and off. I adjusted the gain so that the EQ doesn't change the volume of the kick, so that we can hear the true difference. If the EQ is louder, then we might be fooled by loudness, believing that it sounds better when it's actually just louder and potentially not better sounding. This goes not just for EQ, but for any other sound changing effect. Now let's move on to the sub. So we already made some low pass and high pass on the sub. Now what I like to do is to boost the key frequency. So we're working in F sharp, and that is around 92 Hz. So let's boost that and see how it sounds. And now let's bypass on and off and hear the difference. You can hear how it really adds to the drive of the sub. Now let's add both of the kick and the sub bass to its own bus. And we do that by selecting the sub and the kick by holding Control if you're on PC, right click, and then select Add Bus for selected channels. What this will do is it will create a new bus and it will connect the sub bass line and the kick, so we don't have to do it manually on each channel. Let's call this kick and sub with capital letters. And what we will do now is add a compressor to kind of glue together the kick and sub a little bit more. And let's do what we always do, some extreme settings. And now let's dial the threshold back a bit. Sounds more tight, however I think the kick tail is a little long, so let's take care of that next. We open up the sampler again, go to kick. Sounds tighter. Now let's add an EQ to the buzz. Let's do some low cut. Let's boost some low end as well. Now let's compare by bypassing on and off. Now let's sweep around and see if there are any low mid frequency that could be tamed. Let's switch the whole EQ on and off to compare. Now these changes are very subtle, but I do think that they make a difference. A trick I've learned recently is to delay the kick a millisecond or two so that it hits right after the kickstart plugins are triggered. This will create just a little bit more space for the kick to punch. Again, very subtle, but will make a bigger difference later on in the track. So that's it for this part. I will see you in the next, where we will get started on the arrangement. See you soon.